What's going on, everyone? This is Noah from Spanky the Sparky. Today we have a special guest, Mr. John Webb out of IBEW Local 490. He is the Apprenticeship Director. Mr. Webb, how's it going?
Good. Happy to be here. I love what you're doing, so I'm happy to be a part of it.
Well, I greatly appreciate you taking the time. I do a lot of interviews with journeymen, but it's always nice to gain an outside perspective of people in upper positions in whatever local, so I greatly appreciate you taking the time to do the interview. To begin with, though, just give us a little insight about yourself, maybe how you got entry into the trades, anything you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, mine's a little probably less conventional than most. I started off doing trade work on the side. I was planning on going to college and getting a college education, and my dad was a jack of all trades, and I wanted to learn how to work on houses so I wouldn't have to pay someone a lot of money to work on my house. I fell in love with trade work, doing cabinetry. Went from doing cabinetry to building houses, start to finish, foundations up to, finish work inside the house. While doing that, I worked for the electrician that used to wire our houses that we built on weekends. I went out, tried to start my own business as a contractor, building houses. Didn't go great, had a hard problem paying my rent, so I ended up calling that electrician, asking if he would employ me. He did. I worked for him for like 7 or 8 months. He asked me to be a legit apprentice, start going to school and stuff. I did it as like a bookholder until I found what I really wanted to do in life. And it's been 20 years, so it kind of just happened. Wasn't my intention, but I'm lucky. I'm very grateful, and I'm very happy with where my career has taken me and where I've ended up. I was non-union for 10 years. I worked for 10 separate companies. I joined the union about 10 years ago, so my career is about 50-50 when it comes to non-union and union employment. And I pride myself on not being overly biased. I am a union training director. I am very happy with my union, but I'm not going to talk down my electrical brethren. They are still electricians. We are still trying to make money. We are trying to build things. We are trying to do our jobs, make a paycheck, and be safe. I think the union provides that better than others, but I try not to be too biased.
Yeah.
And then I got into, I was a foreman for almost every company I worked for. I ran some pretty sizable projects. And then when the opportunity came up to be the training director for our apprenticeship, after I had been a teacher for 3 years, I took it because, again, awesome. I started teaching and fell in love with teaching. I really loved it. And when I got the opportunity to run our school, I jumped at it immediately. And it's been about 3 years now that I've been the training director for this program. And it's been awesome. It's been a great ride.
That's awesome, and it's important to notate even while I was going through like high school and such, if you have a poor teacher, it makes you not want to, whether it's like a poor science teacher, you don't want to go to science class, so it's more important in my opinion, especially on the trade side of things, if you have a bad director, just someone that's not kind of out of touch with their students, your students aren't going to want to show up to that school, and then in return, that's going to be a reflection of your local. That's pretty cool. You've worked for 10 different companies across residential, commercial, industrial, controls, medical, and more. How did that wide range of experience shape the way you teach and run your local 490s apprenticeship?
It shaped it a lot. I was really fortunate in the first employer that I had. I worked for 7 years. He did everything. I mean, it was me and him, me and the boss, and side by side. And because of that, I was never stuck on just lumping stock for weeks at a time or anything like that. It was, if we were doing controls, I was sitting next to him doing controls. If we were doing fire alarm, awesome. I was sitting next to him doing fire alarm. So we did medical, we did residential, we did anything he could get his hands on. And he taught me a lot. I was very fortunate to have him as my first employer, my journeyman, my teacher, and all that stuff. And it was interesting coming into the union because our local doesn't do residential at all, almost. We do strictly commercial, industrial type stuff. Yeah. And when I came into it, it was a little bit of a shock because I never used triple nickels, I never used hydraulic, I never used all these big expensive tools that a small company would have. Yeah. So when I'm teaching, when I'm running our program and teaching it, I have to do so from the mindset that I need to prepare our apprentices for the work that we do as a union. so I have to focus on commercial and industrial.
Yeah.
But I do get into the residential, I get into the small stuff because it is part of our trade. A lot of our guys
Yes,
do stuff on the side, whether you agree with it or not.
Yeah.
And we also want to promote our guys to start their own businesses. We'd like to have some small contractors that do residential. It's just not in our market at the moment.
Yeah.
But because I have that varied background, it gives me a little bit more ability to talk to the practical ends of our classroom as opposed to just like going through the book work. I can share more about how it associates with what they will actually do in the field throughout their career.
And kind of like you had mentioned, you have a residential background. I myself started non-union in the residential side. And for me personally, I'm very appreciative that I started at least on the residential side, because it's not a full overlap, but I believe you learn a lot of things residentially, especially if you learn them before the commercial side, that greatly helps you on the commercial side. Obviously, there's a lot more, or not a lot more unless you're like in Chicago, but there's like commercially you're running a bunch of conduit, terminating switchgear, but I also think it's important to be able to go into your own home, for instance, and be able to run circuits if you need to, things like that, which, I mean, kind of like you said, it might be looked down upon at time to time, doing, I guess, quote-unquote side work, but I do think it's important to have the residential side, and I think it's awesome that you have both sides and you're able to use both sides of that spectrum to teach. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's always kind of made me laugh because you have the commercial industrial guys, and they do kind of like look down on the residential side. And they're like, it's just residential, but it's like I know quite a few commercial industrial electricians who have never done work in a house, and
Yep.
they're not familiar with how to do a service change. They're not familiar. Some of them have an issue with three-way and four-way switching because you don't do it in a lot of commercial environments.
Yep.
And I've had guys who. They can't fish wire for the life of them going across, an existing basement or ceiling or through up 3 floors through a house up from a basement to an attic, and they don't even know where to start. And it's like, it's not less, it's just different.
Different and just as important.
Yeah, exactly. It's all part of our trade. It's all part of that big fat code book that we go through.
And I think that's, we use the term electrician, and I hate to say it in this manner, but I think, at least in today's climate, I think we have electricians who can go in, do what you just mentioned, but also the troubleshooting aspect. And then we have, in my opinion, what I just call installers, someone that can run conduit. And at the end of the day, I think it's important that everyone, at least in the IBEW, is an electrician and not just an installer. That might not be a too liked statement, but it's my own statement, so it is what it is.
I think it's fair. I think a lot of people that might push back on that statement might fall into that installer category. Maybe that's why.
Yeah. You don't necessarily have like a post-high school education outside of the trades, and you're now a training director. But what's cool is you're now a training director. What does that say to someone that's young who might be thinking college is the only pathway to a successful career?
So that's one of the big things I focus on when I speak with classes, and I'm going to high schools and stuff like that. Is I don't tell anyone not to go to college, but I do try to really emphasize that it's not the only pathway. And for a lot of people, it's not even about the college debt, which is a huge thing to consider nowadays because college is not as affordable as it was, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's just something else to consider if you're not a classroom person, if you're not an academic. You got guys out there who maybe people that maybe they're not great with math, or maybe they're not great with reading comprehension, but they can rip apart an entire vehicle and put it back together better than it was. They have a mechanical aptitude, they have an ability, and they have a place, they have a successful career path, but they need to know it exists. And honestly, I will say that in the job fairs I've been going to and the schools I've been talking to, high schools have been a lot better in the past 5 years, and it's getting better, to acknowledge trade work as a career path for people. They are leaning away from college as the only answer. You have to have a degree. And I'm seeing a lot of these places invite us to come to these job fairs because they want their students to know this is an opportunity. It's the bias is, I think, fading a little bit, which is thankful because, as I'm sure you know because you've talked to a lot of people, we are in a detriment of electricians. We are
Yep.
losing more than we are gaining almost on a yearly basis. Like, we need electricians on all tradesmen. We need them so bad.
Yep.
And people need to understand that it is a viable career. I didn't do any post high school education. I just went into the trades by chance, and it's worked out awesome for me. And other people need to know that's available to them as well, especially if they're not a student that likes to sit in classrooms.
And that's one of the main reasons. So I don't know if you know much about my platform, Spanky the Sparky, but I initially started my platform to post like my actual work. The issue with that is a lot of the jobs have been on, require NDAs before you ever step on the site, stating you won't take or have any videography, photography. So that kind of ruled it out. But having started on the non-union side, making $12 an hour initially starting out, having to provide all my own power tools, no benefits, and then making the jump or the transition into the union, this completely changed the trajectory of not only my life, but also I'm married, so it definitely helps my marriage. A happy wife is a happy life. And I believe that's why social media is something that's so important that we're able to utilize. And I don't believe a lot of locals, not only on the IBEW side, but all construction trades as a whole. I mean, I'm active on LinkedIn as well, and I kind of get some pushback from, it seems like a lot of the older generation there. But it's a platform that we're able to utilize, and if utilized in the correct manner, we can show, like, yeah, college isn't the only way. And through stories like yourself, now being a director of a teaching institution, college isn't always needed for success. And yeah, I think that's awesome. You're the only full-time employee at the JETC and still manage instructors, curriculum, and apprentices. What does a typical week actually look like for you behind the scenes? Because everyone always sees the production, but they never see behind the scenes, which is always hectic, and that's with anything in life. I'm sure that's pretty challenging.
It's crazy. One of the things I've always kind of laughed about when it comes to the IBW, and this isn't a knock, it's just kind of an interesting thing, is, the IBW is an institution that once you leave the field from being a journeyman, you're a business agent, an organizer, a business manager, a benefits manager, an office manager, a training director, an instructor, a lab instructor. We have people that are treasurers,
Yeah.
We have all these positions within our organization, and we fill every one of these positions regardless of the skill set or demand with electricians from our own local, which is neat in a way, but at the same time it's like, man, it's crazy that a guy like me with no formal education in education or management or schooling is running a school.
Yeah.
It's trade school, but it's like I got taken out of the field and dropped into an office. I've never worked in an office in my entire life. It's very weird. But to get back to what you were kind of getting at, is my week is chaos.
Yeah.
I'm doing everything from, we work with the VA. We report hours to the VA for what they've worked so people can get their GI bills collected.
That's awesome.
I'm working with the local government. I have to report to the Department of Labor. I have to report to the ETA, which is the educational platform that we use mostly nationally across all the IBWs. If you're in an apprenticeship, you're probably dealing with the ETA and their LMS system. I'm reminding apprentices to get their licenses renewed. I'm reporting their hours. I'm dealing with conflicts with the contractor. If something's not going right, and it's the apprentice that's having an issue, I will typically be the one to reach out to the contractor and talk to them about those issues.
Yeah.
To an level, I'm playing therapist. I'm playing HR. I have apprentices come to my office and sit on my couch, and they vent to me. They're having struggles in their life, whether it be within the apprenticeship, at work, or at home, and somehow I have found myself in a position where I'm someone they will talk to and confide in. So
That's awesome.
I don't have any training in that stuff, so I'm sitting there talking to people about their personal issues. And I'm doing my best, but at the same time trying to keep a professional level where I'm not saying something that, not so that I'm worried about getting in trouble, but I'm just trying to make sure I do the best for them, but not speaking out of my own opinion, which is not an educational. I'm not a therapist,
Yeah.
And then I'm physically out in the lab rooms building labs for the students to do. I'm setting up things. I'm sweeping floors. I am laying out schedules for my other instructors. I'm putting tests together, curriculums, lesson plans. I mean,
That's wild.
It's every day I sit down at my desk, and as I go to start my day, it kind of just, I kind of look around at the random papers and printouts that I have around me. I look at my post-it note pile, and I look at my desktop notes, and I'm like, all right, what do I feel like doing at the moment? And I just start doing
Yeah.
stuff. It's crazy. I didn't know for a long time that I was one of the few training directors in the country that are like alone. There's a bunch of us, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm
Yeah.
probably 5% of the training directors that are just alone.
Yeah. No, that's wild, to be honest. I didn't realize that existed in that capacity. So that's an interesting outlook. And a lot of the things you just mentioned, I believe communication is a big aspect in that with anything in life. If you're a good communicator, I believe you can get pretty far ahead in just about every facet of life, and it sounds like you have pretty good communication overall. You might not be the best at, as a foreman, you're not going to know everything, but if you're good at communicating, for instance, you're going to have a crew that's going to elevate you, and in return, you're going to help elevate them. So I believe communication's big in that, and what you're doing, wearing all the different hats, that's very impressive. And I'm sure it's challenging, but yet rewarding. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, the national statistic for training directors in the IBW for a career span is 3 years.
Really?
It is, yeah. It is something they've been making a lot of effort nationally to work on, because a lot of us get burnt out, overwhelmed. A lot of us are electricians, and we come into the office and we don't know how to do office stuff, and that gets very stressful, so we have a problem with that. But the national career span for a training director is about 3 years. It's kind of crazy, and I see why. It makes sense, but I love it, so I think I'll be around for a while. I think
That's awesome. I just so I went through my apprenticeship, became a journeyman, took a foreman role, and then actually at the start of January I went into a superintendent role, and kind of the whole aspect of getting into the office. Especially over the last couple of weeks, it was shell shock for myself, because I was used to just being out in the field, moving around, and now it's a lot different.
Oh, so this just happened a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I started my superintendent role on, what's today? January 5th was my official first day for for this position.
Congratulations, that's awesome, man. Good
Thank
for you.
Yeah, but it's been a big change. A lot of it kind of goes back to behind the scenes. When you're out in the field, you only see the field aspect. You kind of poke fun at the people in the office, and then once you're in the office, it's like, holy crap, this is not what I was expecting. So it definitely opened my eyes and made me more appreciative of the people in the office, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on that you just simply don't realize until you're in those positions.
That is a huge thing that I stress with my students is, as an apprentice, I'm like, you need to understand that, what you're seeing your journeyman do and what they're doing is a part of what they're actually doing. And as a journeyman, what you're seeing your foreman actually do is a part of what they're doing. And as a foreman, what your general, I'm like, a lot of us are very quick to point out the failures of our superiors. Yep. I think part of that is because it makes us feel a little good. I'm just as good as them. I caught that. But I'm like, you need to understand that when you catch, you're told to run a 3/4 pipe run, and they tell you to run it like this. You get halfway through, and then you realize there's a problem with the way that's being run, and you're like, oh my god, we can't run it this way. This is so dumb. Why would he have me do it this way? And they start immediately kind of being like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's having me do this thing. It's not even going to work. But I'm like, you gotta understand that that's like one of 30 pipe runs he might be laying out for a group of people. Like, that's one aspect of a large job that he's doing. And like, when you're hyper focusing on a small thing, yes, you're going to catch that stuff. And that's part of your job, and that's good. Good on you. You should. But, like, don't be so quick to criticize him, because he's got a ton of stuff, and he's going to catch mistakes that his boss isn't catching, because his boss has a lot going on. I'm like, it kind of all goes uphill. So I'm like, we all need to be a little bit more, let's be a little bit more generous and kind with our superiors on how difficult their jobs may be. Not all of them are great, but none of that negativity gets us anywhere. We should be working together, helping each other.
That's very true.
I really believe in the brotherhood, and it's like I tell everyone, I'm like, if you're working with someone who's not good at something, don't sit there and just talk bad about them. Help them. Sit them down, and be like, hey, let me help you, show you how to do this better. Let's all be better so we can be successful.
That is true. That's very important, and I believe coming from the non-union side, it was more of a each into their own, like I'm going to do what I can to make myself look as good as possible. On the union side, it's like, let's bring everyone up. Let's have everyone hopefully on the same playing field, because in return, that collectively, that helps everyone. And I believe that's a big difference, whether you agree with it or not. But Local 490 covers all of New Hampshire and part of Maine, which is pretty unique in my opinion. Like Local 683, where I'm out of, only covers, I call it a small area in central Ohio. In a state that's historically tough for unions, between Maine and New Hampshire, what are the biggest challenges you face to grow the market or the union market share in an environment like that?
So there's two things when it comes to growing the local. There is, you need the work for the contractors to employ more people to grow your membership.
That's true.
But you also need your membership to be of significant size where the contractors feel confident they can take on the additional work and meet the deadlines and stuff.
That's
so
very true as well.
Any local trying to grow, they're in a chicken in the egg situation. And even when you have some of these projects, some of these locals I talk to, they have data centers coming up, and the data center needs 1,200 electricians, and they have 6. So the local's looking at growing. They're looking at, like, we got to double our local in the next 2 years to meet that data center. But then there's always the concern of, like, well, what happens when that data center's over? Where do those extra 600 people go? So it's about gaining members, but having work for the members, getting work and having members to work the work, and then having retention or consistency so people can stay and be established. And those 3 things can be very difficult in a state like ours where, one, we have 8% market share. We're a small local, and we do a small amount of the work in the state. And in my personal opinion, I'm not a professor or anything, but in my personal opinion, one of our biggest roadblocks is a lot of these locals that have enormous numbers and huge market share, like Boston, which is our neighboring local, they're right on our border. They have a lot of jobs that non-union companies can't do. If they're doing a skyscraper and it's 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 electricians that are needed, there's almost no non-union company that can fill that role. So you almost have to go to the union for that. New Hampshire, we don't have big projects. We don't have skyscrapers. We don't have giant tunnels that go for miles. We don't have huge bridges. I mean, our biggest cities are Concord and Manchester, and even the work there is, manageable. Our largest job is typically on a yearly basis. We've been there for like 15 years. One of our largest jobs is at a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility.
Wow.
And at peak, that job is 50, 60 electricians. There are several non-union companies in our state that have 50, 60 guys on staff that can man that job. So when our contractors are bidding work, they are constantly, consistently bidding against non-union companies that can man those projects without the overhead of the benefit packages we have. So we have to be very competitive. Because of that, our rate, in some states the rates are a lot higher. Our state is sadly a lower rate state. We get paid well, I'm not complaining, but we are definitely not Boston. I took a $2 pay cut to join the union. I took it for the benefits, but I took a pay cut. So you're dealing with market share of not being competitive with your non-union counterparts, and then on top of that, you're trying to win people over to the union with a package that on the paycheck is very close, and you got to sell people on the benefits. And some people, if they don't care about benefits, then essentially it's hard to actually bring them over. So it's a challenge. We've been a steady local our size for a good 30, 40 years now. We haven't grown, we haven't grown, we haven't shrank, but we're just steady. We're working on it.
And that part's mind-boggling to me, especially the benefits aspect. Even if you make, let's say, $3 less an hour hourly, I mean, the benefits in itself is going to greatly exceed that $3. And that's something, I don't know how, you can write it out on a whiteboard, paper, whatever the case may be. I think at the end of the day, someone's either going to accept it or decline it. If they decline it, I don't really know how you can argue with them. It sounds like they've made up their mind, but that's just kind of weird to me that you're going to leave that much money off of the table because, you have to live in the here and now, but you also have to prepare for the future.
Yeah. When I speak with high schools and I go to classes, part of my presentation is breaking down our benefits, and I try to sell it, but at the same time, when you're talking to like an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, they're getting health insurance with their parents till they're 25. They're healthy. They don't have any kids. They don't have a spouse. So like health insurance is like,
Don't care.
it's not even that important. In general, they're invincible. And then, they're going to live forever, so they don't care about retirement. They're just going to be able to work until they enter forever. Why do I need to worry about retirement? I was like that. I didn't care about retirement. I didn't care about health insurance. It wasn't until I was 30 that I'm looking at my wife who needs health insurance. I'm looking at how much it's going to cost me to add her to my program in the non-union world.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the fact that I was just going to work till I died. That was my retirement. I just was like, yeah, we're never going to have a retirement. I'm just going to keep working. And one day I just won't. And, I try to really stress that to the younger people, but it's like, some of them are future minded, and that's great, but some of them are just, they don't care. If they get another $2 in their check, they'll
That's
worry
all they
about
care.
all that stuff later on when it comes up.
And
it's
that's-
like, oh, do it now.
And that's one thing everyone I've talked to, they all have said the exact same thing. My only regret about joining whatever labor union they're in is that I didn't start sooner. And I know, obviously, as time goes on, you become more knowledgeable, you experience more things, but I think that also ties back into social media, having these open conversations, putting out, like, legitimate knowledge about the union trades. I think it's important, and I hope it's something that all union-based organizations do a better job of as we progress. So,
Yeah. I mean, we try to sell, because I know that those aren't the big selling factors for the kids. I say kids because I'm old.
yeah.
But I'm literally, I try to sell the community aspect of it. I try to sell our training aspect. I like to pride ourselves on being one of the better or best apprenticeships in the state.
Yeah.
I haven't attended other apprenticeships, so it's hard for me to say. But we've had a number of people come to our apprenticeship from other apprenticeships. They've come into our union as a second or third year apprentice, and universally, every one of them that has come into our program from another program, I ask them, how does it compare? How do you like it? Is it better? Is it worse? Do you have any regrets? And so far, everyone is just, no, this is awesome. This is great. I'm learning so much. This is so ahead of where I came from.
Yeah.
And so I try to sell that. I'm like, if you want a good career, we're the ones that are going to train you the best to get it. I try to sell other aspects of our union to the kids who don't care about pensions and, health insurance.
They don't care about them now, but when they get a little older, they're like, okay, yeah, I regret that. But that's true.
I tell them all, it really hits you when you start seeing your parents try to retire.
Yeah.
When you see your parent either not being able to retire, and you're like, oh my God, they can't, like, they're working and they're older, and I oh my God, it breaks my heart to see them.
Yep.
Or like I joke, or your parents are like, on a boat, drunk 7 days a week, and just living their best life in some tropical location. It's like, both of those things kind of hit home. I'm like, oh man, I should really prepare for this, because it will come, and it will matter.
That's very true. You take in about 30 apprentices a year, but roughly about 33%, one-third, don't make it through the whole program, or make it through the full program. From your perspective, why do you believe apprentices wash out, and what separates the ones who succeed, in your opinion?
So I've been working on that a lot lately. The first couple of years I was in this program, and especially when I was teaching, I was seeing the attrition. I was seeing people drop. Every 2 months we'd have someone leave the program. This year, so far, since the beginning of our year in September, we've only lost 2 students.
That's awesome.
One left and one was actually kicked. So this year our attrition is doing fantastic.
That is awesome.
It's crazy. So I've really been trying to narrow down what's going on. Because right now I have 15, 20 apprentices out of work. It's almost a quarter, a fifth of our apprentices are currently not working. Some of them haven't worked for months, and they are sticking around. And I love it. It makes me so happy. But at the same time, like, that is usually the reason is I haven't worked enough. I'm going to go somewhere where I'm more steady.
That's understandable.
But honestly, I think the 2 things that I think contributed the most to our attrition in the past was unrealistic expectations of what this would be like.
Yeah.
And I think beyond that was construction, just
Yeah.
the construction culture. I think
That is true.
we had a kid. Yeah, I mean, we had a kid come in. He joined the apprenticeship. He was a first year apprentice, and his first day of work, he was told by his journeyman, "Hey, all that conduit needs to go upstairs," and there was no elevator. So the kid and two other apprentices were told, like, "Yep, grab bundles of 3/4 and lump them up 3 flights of stairs to the third floor."
Yep.
And before the end of the day, one of the kids quit, and his
Really?
answer was, "I'm not here to just do labor. I'm here to learn." And it was like, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We had another kid quit because he thought being an electrician was going to be like working on electronics. He legitimately thought he was going to be soldering circuit boards and replacing capacitors. Like, he thought electronics would
Yeah.
be part of our gig. So recently, this past year, I have been brutally honest about what this will be like. I don't sugarcoat anything. I really, really pride myself in and try to be as transparent as possible about what this apprenticeship will be like, how hard the work will be. You will be in the heat. You know, you will be in 110-degree heat on a hot day, doing stuff all day with all your safety gear on. You're going to be out in the winter, freezing, putting together metal, post for solar panels. You are going to be, organizing stock. You are going to be doing mundane, dumb stuff that you don't do anything that you need your brain for weeks straight. You might be unemployed for 3 months at a time. Like, yeah. I'm just like, this is a rough go, but it is worth it.
I agree.
And I think setting that expectation has made it so the people that end up accepting our offer to join our program genuinely do have a better idea of what they're getting into. So when these things happen, it's not like, this sucks, and they leave.
Yeah.
They're ready for it. That's a huge contribution. I think that's been a big thing, and I think in general, I think a lot of people that leave the programs nationally, because that 30% is pretty consistent nationally.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with just wrong expectations. I think some people oversell the program because they really want to lure people in, but it's like, we got to lure the right people in.
That is an issue.
It takes a personality. Most of us have ADHD and anxiety, and we just thrive off it in the field because, we're kind of crazy. So, yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, is setting expectations.
And I believe you kind of mentioned it, that you're very transparent. I believe transparency is key. And I do think in all construction-related trades, if you can make it through the first year of whatever construction trade that you're in, I think you're set, in my opinion. I think in the first year, pretty quickly you're going to be like, yeah, this isn't for me, or like, yeah, this is kind of iffy. And then once you get over that first year hump, it's like, okay, I got enough general basis down to feel like I can make it through this. At least that's how it was for me. I know the first 2 months in specific, especially working non-union, it's kind of like a slap in the face. I wasn't sure what to expect going into it, but it definitely wasn't what those first 2 months had in store for me. So I'm very glad to have continued on personally. But yeah, I believe transparency and being upfront is very important.
I think.
No, I'm sorry. You're good.
No, I was just saying, I think, like I was saying, the other aspect of it is it being construction. I think something, I might get some heat for this, but like, I think something the older bucks need to understand is that the new generations coming up aren't like us. They're not like us. They're not like the people before us. And I don't say this, and I really don't like this intergenerational critiquing of like, old guys are jerks and they're, cold and heartless and they're, whatever, racist or sexist or whatever. And then you got like the old guys are like, you kids are lazy, they don't want to work. And it's like, you can go back 150 years and look at newspaper clippings, and there are articles about how the new generation is lazy, the new generation doesn't want. This is a critique every generation.
That's true.
These intergenerational critiques and struggles are so insanely consistent. And I think some of the new guys, some of the old guys need to understand that the new guys coming up, and when we, if an old journeyman calls me, what are you stupid? You didn't, and starts giving the kid crap, and the kid gets upset and is like, this is this is nonsense. Like, I'm not dealing with this. Can goes to the boss and complains, or whatever.
Yeah.
The general consensus I hear from the old bucks is the kid's overly sensitive, and I don't view it that way. I don't view it as overly sensitive because none of us like being talked to like that. I think the difference with the upcoming generations, they're just like, I'm not willing to put up with it. Like, nah, I'm gonna go say something. Like, I don't think they're more sensitive than us. We just kind of would go, oh, okay, and just kind of like eat it.
Yeah.
But these kids are like, nah, like, I'll find another job. I don't need this. Like, and I'm proud of them for it. I'm like, good. Like, we shouldn't be condescending. We shouldn't be demeaning. We shouldn't. The stress of your job should be the job itself, not the people you're working with and how they treat you.
I agree.
For the kids that stand up for them, I'm like, good. And when they come to me about these problems, I say the same thing. I'm like, yeah, let's address it. Let's get that guy to knock that stuff off, because I'm not into this. The apprentice pays their dues and has to deal with that stuff. No. That's not how it works.
That's true.
We should be going to work. We should be treated right. You know.
And especially on the non-union side, because like our pension, for instance, all that has to be paid into. If you're older, treating the younger generation poorly for whatever your reasons may be, I mean, your retirement depends on these younger individuals, and if you're making them leave the trade in droves, I mean, not your education, but your retirement is going to suffer. So, definitely, I think you nailed it. Your apprenticeship is approximately 200 hours of classroom work with night classes and some Saturdays. How do you balance demanding work schedules with education without burning the apprentices out? I know every apprenticeship is set up a little differently, but how do you manage that?
So we used to be a Saturday program, just Saturdays. That was like 5-6 years ago, and then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, we couldn't justify having 80, 90 apprentices all in a school all together at the same time. You know, it was COVID. Separation. So we went to a 2-night-a-week program where one night was over Zoom, one night was in person, and the night that was in person was different for each class. So everyone got separated quite a bit. Well, when COVID ended, we kept that one night on Zoom, one night in person kind of structure. When I came into the training director position, I was not a fan of this, because I was one of the teachers teaching the Zoom classes, and I hated teaching on Zoom. It's a hands-on trade, and to have people on Zoom, half of them have their cameras off, half of them are watching a movie in the background. Like, some of them would legitimately try, but even as a teacher, me trying to teach, trying to be engaging, trying to make it interesting was so incredibly difficult. So I wanted to get rid of Zoom. The problem is we're a larger our jurisdiction is a good amount of space. So a lot of people are traveling an hour and 20 minutes to our school. And to ask them to come 2 nights a week, that's an extra burden on the apprentice. That's extra gas money with guys that aren't making enough sometimes. And extra time out of their schedule. And we don't want them, like you said, we don't want them to get burnt out. We want them to do this successfully without it, ruining the rest of their lives. So with the new CML program that the ETA released, they give you credit. They give you in-classroom hour credit for the CML stuff you do in your personal time at home.
That's awesome.
So utilizing those hours that they would give us, I was able to add a couple Saturdays, extend our 3-hour class to a 4-hour class, and I was able to drop our apprenticeship to 1 night a week, 4 hours a night.
That's
and
awesome.
Still meet all the requirements for the state and the ETA and the Department of Labor. Now apprentices are only come to school 1 night a week. They have the rest of the week. Evenings are theirs. It's all in person, and because our classrooms are 4 hours, it lets them. We do labs a lot. We do a lot of hands-on stuff, which is a lot of things they want to do. Some of it's come with bargaining with the contractors, because they have to be at class at 5, and some of them have to leave work early to get to class on time. That was discussed with the contractors ahead of time, and they agreed to it. And they said, "Yeah, no, we'll just deal with it if when it comes up and it happens." And we do.
That's awesome.
We try to make the apprenticeship as easy as possible for the apprentices, because the easier it is for them to handle on a workload basis, I feel like the more effort they'll put into the work they have to do, and the better attitude they'll have. You want happy people. Happy people are going to be better at what they do.
That's very true. It helps retain them too, especially in their apprenticeship. So that's awesome that you guys are doing those things. With work split across industrial, commercial, solar, residential, apprentices see a lot of variety. how important is early exposure, and what skills do you think matter most long term? At least in local 490, for example.
That is such a difficult question. So I do apprenticeship evaluations, not for the apprentices. Well, I do those too, but
Yeah,
I have the apprentices do an evaluation on the apprenticeship itself at the middle of the year and at the end of the year, because I'm constantly trying to figure out how I can make it better and what I can do.
that's actually awesome.
And yeah, we literally just did one like 3 weeks ago. So I was going through. So I have 80 sets of surveys that I'm going through and I'm reading the comments and stuff. And it's hard because I'm the labs we are doing in the first year program immediately are the ones that I feel like are going to be the most universally beneficial. Not everyone's on the same job doing the same thing, so it's not going to be. But like the amount of people I had being like, oh, I really wish we wired devices earlier in the year. So
Yeah.
I would have been able to do that job, or I wish we did. But it's like I have like 30 people all saying, "I wish we did this instead of what we did because it would have helped me." And I'm like, "Okay, but you're one of 2 people that said that in 80 people or 30
Yeah.
people." You know what I mean? Like, so it's something I'm battling with, honestly. We started with tools, just how tools work, how to work them, how to use channel locks the right way, directionally. How to use linemen. Tape measure, like how to just use basic tools, because we take kids out of high schools that have never been in the trades, never had a job.
Yeah.
They don't know anything. From there, it was like, okay, like this is how you assemble a trapeze. This is how you put hardware together.
That's very important too.
Yeah, because I mean, I try to think about what when I was running work, what I would have my first years do. I wasn't having them wiring panels and stuff. I was having them put racks up for pipe runs. So we did that. We did a hole saw lab where we're drilling through steel with different size hole saws and unibits
That's
and
awesome.
carbide bits. We did a pole punch lab, drilling and tap, like more mechanical stuff.
That's awesome.
Because the electrical stuff is going to be better when you get into the theory. I'm not going to show you how to wire 3-way switching if you don't understand the electrical theory behind the 3-way switching.
That's
I
true.
can show you these colors go to this, but it doesn't make sense, and it's about teaching them how to fish, not giving them a fish.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to base the labs with the curriculum, and I'm trying to base the curriculum on the foundational stuff you need to build off of. So again, it's a wicked challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, essentially we start with tools and hardware and mechanical things that are fairly universal across any job you're doing. And then from there we get into the more electrical 3-way switching, devicing, outlets, lights, stuff like that.
And I think that's awesome that you guys do I call it a hands-on approach early on, because there's I know a lot of either current apprentices or like even journeymen who they went through the schooling, they learned the theory, I call it book smart, but our job is very hands-on. If you can't install a rack, for instance, or you can't bend your conduit, or know how to lay out a panel tub, all those things are what we're doing. Maybe not daily, but that's a big part of our job. So I think it's awesome that you guys up front go through that stuff, or like using of hand tools and so forth. All that stuff's very important. It might seem minuscule as you progress, but especially early on, good habits and correct habits is very important. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we try as the first year, we try to do a lab at least every other week, if not every night. And it might only be a half hour of just like, we're going to splice. We did a wire splicing lab the other night.
Yeah.
We've gone through 5,000 feet of pipe this year with 30 students. It's a significant amount of pipe for us at least. Because again, when we were doing those evaluations, the biggest thing we kept having people say was, "I want to do more hands-on. I want to do more labs. I want to get taught more stuff," because not everyone has a journeyman in the field that's going to sit them down and explain things. They're going to go, drill this hole there, and when the kid's like, "Well, how do you use a hole saw?" It's like, you put it together, you do this, like drill the hole. Like, not everyone's going to get a journeyman that wants to spend time investing, or sometimes you're on a job that doesn't allow that kind of time. Everything's very rushed and hectic, and it's not even the journeyman's fault, it's just the time constraint. So as much as this classroom is supposed to be for classroom, and as much as it's supposed to be for the book work and the academic, it's like we still got to do our part in the classroom to help these guys learn the stuff that they might not be learning in the field. And also, like, that's what the kids want. Like, I think that's helping retention too, just doing what they want to do and not lecturing them for 4 hours and doing PowerPoints and worksheets.
That's very, very true. And that's awesome. I can speak on like a lot of Central Ohio. I mean, I've done a ton of hospital work, but especially over the last 2.5, 3 years, data centers all throughout Central Ohio have just been going off, and they're extremely fast paced. And thankfully, I got, especially going through my apprenticeship, I got a very well-rounded experience. I was exposed to a lot, but that involved me asking not only questions out in the field, but like going to my foreman at the time and saying like, I feel like I'm not learning enough. And then I spoke with my apprenticeship director, and I got rotated around a lot after that. And yeah, I believe at a certain point, you can learn what you learn on a job site, but at a certain point, as an apprentice, you're gonna have to speak up and say, I want to learn more. And I feel like if you do it in a respectful manner, the people in charge of those aspects will do their best to allow you to experience whatever you want to experience.
I love that you said that, because that, yeah, 100%. I have apprentices that do come to me frequently and be like, I've been doing this one thing forever. I feel like, I'm watching other apprentices get to do X, Y, Z, and I don't, blah, blah, blah. And my first question will be like, have you talked to your journeyman or foreman and said, hey, I noticed this is happening on the job. I've never done that before, and I'd really like the chance to learn. Like, is there any chance that I can get on that part of the project or something? Like you said, really respectfully. It's not out of I'm bored, I'm not getting taught. It's not out of a way of complaint or frustration. Just show it as a means of ambition.
Yeah.
I would really love to learn that. Show them that it's out of motivation and you having a desire to be better at your job, and not you just being upset that you're being treated differently. You know what I mean? Like, there's a way to approach it. And when I ask them that, they go, no, I haven't said anything. I'm like, say something. Because I tell them, like, when I was running work, if I had 5 apprentices and we were about to do a bunch of panel work, and one of them came up to me and was like, hey, like, I know you're mounting tubs, I know you're going to start cutting in panels, like, I've never done one before, I really want to. That is going to lock its way in my mind. I'm going to try to make an effort to make that happen, because, like, if I have someone who's motivated and driven, I want to encourage that.
Exactly.
That is someone who is going to benefit you long term. That is someone who's going to not only do the task you want, they're going to take pride in it, they're going to want to learn when they do it, they're going to want to be good at it, and they're probably going to be a great person for you down the road as that continues. And I tell the apprentice, like, don't be afraid to be that guy. Speak up.
No.
And I said, it's not going to work out every time, but that nothing else makes you look good as an apprentice, in the simple fact that you want to learn and you want to be better.
Yep. That is very true. And that kind of like you just mentioned, the panels and tubs, that was exactly where it started with me. I did a ton of conduit running early on, and I finally said, like, yeah, I'm pretty good at running conduit now, but in the future, hypothetically, if I'm ever laid off, or say I have to travel and I show up on a job site and say I can only run conduit, that does me no good if they're in different facets of the job. And I was respectful about it. I mean, it didn't happen right away, but pretty quickly after, I was put on doing a bunch of different things, and that was all she wrote. I was very thankful for that. So, for someone watching this who's non-union or on the fence about applying to the apprenticeship, especially in New Hampshire, specifically, let's just say specifically to IBEW 490, what would you want them to understand about the union that they probably don't hear enough of? Because I know, especially on social media, not just one specific local, but as the union as a whole, there's a lot of misinformation that's put out there.
Insane amounts of it.
Yeah.
The first thing I tell everyone is every union's different. Don't take anything anyone tells you about anything with the union for fact. Find out about yours specifically. Yep. And second, I don't want to mistalk or throw any other locals under the bus, but there is a stereotype that unions aren't merit based. That it's political. It's who you know. Are you friends with the trainer? Are you friends with the business manager? Are you senior? Have you been in the union longer than the other guy? And some locals, they probably do operate that way to an extent. There's probably some handshakes and some deals being made or whatever, favors. But ours specifically is very merit-based. We are competitive. We have to be competitive. We are not winning work because we are handed it. We have to win work because we won the bid, and we can only win the bid if we are productive for our contractors, and the contractors make money and can bid the job based on that profit. So because of that, when the contractor has to lay people off, it's, on very rare occasions are people being kept on a job that aren't performing. It doesn't matter if they're friends with who. It's, we need to get this job done, and I'm sorry, you're not cutting it. So I think that's probably my biggest thing that I try to dispel with people when they talk to us about joining the apprenticeship is a lot of them are worried that if I'm not politically connected or whatever, that I'm not going to have a good apprenticeship, or I'm not going to have a good career. And in our local, that's just not the case. If you're a good worker, you're valuable, you will be employed. It is a merit-based, our union is a merit-based union.
Yeah, kind of building off of that, I think that is I agree that definitely happens in some locals. I'm not here to say it doesn't. But even myself, I'm a first generation IBEW member. And through my entire apprenticeship, I was never laid off, and I attribute that to just my work ethic. And I know many others who have never been laid off, and it's because of their work ethic and their willingness to learn. And I believe at the end of the day, whether it's in a trade or whatever the case may be, whatever profession, if you're willing to work, willing to learn, you'll go very far. Obviously, there are things in place that do help certain individuals, and unfortunately, I think that'll be something all of humanity faces for the rest of time. But you can control what you can control, and most of the time, if you're willing to take control, you'll do pretty well. So.
Yeah, one of the other things, just like, if you're in the union, you're gonna get laid off all the time. And people ask me, like, if I join, how often am I going to be out of work? And it's like, I can't answer that. That's on you. That's on you, and how hard you work, and how reliable you are, and your attitude and your aptitude. You could be laid off 8 months a year because you're not valuable, or you could never take a layoff ever because you absolutely crush it immediately. Everyone loves you, and you're just a hard worker, and the company never wants to get rid of you. It really depends on you. It's not the union. It's you as an individual.
And that part drives me crazy. Obviously, I know each state and each area of that state is going to be different. But like here in Columbus, last year I worked right under 2,800 hours. The year before that, I worked right under 2,600 hours. The year before that, I worked I think it was right under 2,400 hours. So obviously, there's an increase of work in my area, but even if there wasn't that amount of work in the area with a journeyman's ticket, at least you're able to travel. I mean, it's not always desirable, but it's still a good option if needed. So I think it's all important to notate.